I listened carefully to the statement made by the Republican leader. I noticed that for the last few days, the Republicans have been very quiet and calm and circumspect in their reaction to the president's speech to a joint session of Congress last Thursday night. The president, of course, came to us and said, this economy needs a helping hand. We've got to step in and do something. We've got to act and act now. And he came up with a list of proposals Thursday night that I think really do address what America needs. First and foremost, to create jobs. That's the #1 priority. The president says we'll do this by creating tax incentives for small businesses in particular, to hire people who've been unemployed and to give raises to those who currently work. He knows that families are struggling across America, working families, middle-class families, many of them living paycheck to paycheck. Madam President, a recent poll asked working families in America how many could come up with $2,000 in 30 days, either from savings or borrowing, to meet a medical emergency, for example. It turns out barely half of Americans can do so. Working families, barely half of them could come up with $2,000. It's a reminder to many of us who have a comfortable life that the vast majority of working families struggle every single month to make ends meet. President Obama understands that, and that's why he's proposed a payroll tax cut that will put more money in the hands of working families. In Illinois, it'll be an average of about $1,400 a year. I wish it were more, but it's a recognition by the president that to get this economy moving again, people have to have more confidence in their own situation at home and more confidence in the future. Giving working families this spending power can make that difference. The president also understands, and I'm sure the presiding officer understands as well, that many of the families that are unemployed now are desperate. I've visited with many of them during the August recess, going to the Elgin Work Center and to others in McHenry County. I sat down with these people who've been out of work for months, some even years, and asked them, what is your day like? They come to these job centers, they sit down, they work on their resumes, they pour through all of the want ads, they pour through all of the information about people seeking new employees, and they send out their resumes as quickly as possible. And of course, very, very few of them get any response at all. It's a desperate situation. Some of them have lost their homes. Some of them are seeing their kids returning back from college, unable to continue their studies because dad's out of work. Some of the marriages that have been involved have been strained, and some have failed because of this economic hardship. The president understands that, and I hope we do too. Unemployment compensation is absolutely essential as a lifeline to these families, and the president makes that part of his package. When I hear the Republican leader call these suggestions a hodgepodge, I don't think he's fair, and I don't think he's just. Take a look at the specifics. Incentives for businesses to hire new workers, payroll tax cuts for working families for more spending money in hand, unemployment compensation for those who are out of work so they can survive. The president also focuses on critical people. How many of us in the last 48 hours have given a speech somewhere at home or here talking about the great first responders of 9/11? The policemen, the firefighters, the medical professionals who literally risked and some even gave their lives in response to that national emergency. We know what's happening across America. Many of these policemen and firefighters are losing their jobs, along with teachers. The president understands that, and he puts resources in to saving some of those jobs so that we can have the protection we need in our community and the teachers we need for the next generation of workers. And President Obama believes, and I agree, that we need to invest in America. When we build America, when we build the infrastructure that will serve us in the 21st century, we create good-paying jobs right here at home. These aren't jobs you're going to ship overseas, and President Obama understands that. That's why that's a major part of his proposal. We're talking about highways and bridges and airports and ports and waterways and schools. The president understands that that investment in America not only helps us today in invigorating the economy, but will pay off for generations to come. Madam President, there were very few lines the President gave at his speech that drew standing applause from the Republican side. I felt at one point that the temperature on the Republican side of the aisle of the House chamber was 40 degrees below that on the Democratic side. It was cold over there. There was one line that they finally acknowledged, and that was when the President said, for goodness sakes, we owe it to our veterans who've come home to put them to work, to know that 10% of those people who risked their lives for America and are now back home or in unemployment lines is absolutely unacceptable. And President Obama recognizes that in what he has called for to get this economy moving forward. I don't think the Republican leader is fair in calling this a hodgepodge. I think it is a carefully constructed plan to get this economy moving forward. What really troubles the Republican leader, and I know he said as much this morning, is that President Obama pays for it. Over and over again, we hear from the Republican side, don't add to the deficit, pay for what you do. The President came out yesterday with his proposals of how to pay for it. And how does he pay for it? For one, he takes away the subsidy to the oil companies, a federal subsidy that comes right out of the Treasury, going to oil companies across America that are raising gasoline prices to the roof and enjoying the biggest business profits in the history of the United States. Isn't it time to cut back on that subsidy and use those resources for the President's plan to get the economy moving forward? And yes, the President does limit the tax deductions and credits for those in higher income categories. I just find it hard to understand why the Republican position is we cannot ask those who are well off, the most comfortable people in America, to pay 1 penny more in taxes. Their position is absolute, not 1 penny more in taxes for the wealthiest in America. I think that it's fair to limit the tax cuts for the wealthiest so that we can provide tax cuts for working families. That, to me, is sensible. It's not only morally right, it's economically right. And it troubles me when I hear the Republican leader reject that out of hand. It appears that the warmth of the August sun is cooling now in September, and those who went home and heard how unhappy America is with congressional roadblocks and obstruction, they've forgotten that lesson. They've forgotten what they heard. They're coming back now and saying once again, we're going to have a face-off and a confrontation.